The balancing and meta in any game with PvP is going to be a tricky topic. Balancing decisions that are right for one group of the player base are often the incorrect decision for another group. As an example, if we look at the unranked and low elo player base where teamwork and coordination isn't always on display, you will see stuff like Light being picked more often because it is great at disrupting individuals that are isolated and away from their team. This class also plays into the role of being a player who doesn't stick with the team, which kind of makes sense. The heavy class isn't picked as much because the strength of the shields and the ability to initiate can come at a price when you have low mobility. This mobility gets even worse when your medium doesn't provide you ziplines. A core aspect of this class is being elo to be a frontline for your team. And in contrast, high elo lobbies where Light is less common, but is seeing a lot of play in very coordinated teams that often understand the scouting role and potential that Light brings to the team if everyone can play off of it. And teams typically default to the safer and easier pick of double heavy and a medium, or double medium and a heavy, which on that note, you see much more heavies in top players' compositions because of its sheer power to both dish out insane DPS while also providing the team with a defensive wall and strong initiation. Double this up with a pocket heal and you have 2 tanks on a leash. If we decide what to balance here with nerfs or buffs, it may not line up with helping both parties. Embark, in my opinion, has always made steps in the correct direction while sometimes being slow or slightly off mark. It shows me that with time we will get to the right destination. But let's discuss the elephant in the room first, with the FCAR. A weapon that may have been the most complained about weapon in the game in terms of balancing. It's reigned supreme on the medium class for essentially the entire time the game has been live, and I've always been on the fence about how I balance it personally. I'm hoping to make this an open dialogue with Embark, the community as a whole, and anyone in between. The developers listen to the community, and that's a gift not every gamer gets when it comes to their favorite games. I want people to think critically about stuff, put the time and effort into understanding both the game and the specific things you want to see balanced, and hopefully reflect on how it can affect the game as a whole. With the FCAR, an issue with lowering its DPS or damage values is the fact that it's 20 bullets. This can quickly make the weapon become really bad. It will also deter a lot of newer players who often ask for a higher magazine, which a lot of people had asked for very, very early on in the game's lifespan. Suggestions that can benefit both parties often make much more sense, such as buffing things up to be at the same power as the FCAR, or lowering the fire rate of the FCAR, that way its magazine size still has the same kill potential. It also becomes easier for the casuals and newer players, and potentially puts it more in line with the rest of the rifles. Now this is just an example of how we can approach suggestions. I'm not saying that this is the correct solution. Another topic is heavies. Now I flex and play everything equally, so I have no biases coming into my preferences on what class I'd like to see buffed or nerfed, and this class has seen an overwhelming amount of nerfs with little to no buffs, and yet it is still dominating top elo lobbies. And the meta build for the class has not changed since day one. Only recently some people have been experimenting with adding the barricade into it or the anti-grav instead of C4. But the core of having a mesh SA-12, sometimes Lewis gun, the RPG, and dome shield is basically always the same. To someone who enjoys the heavy, it can be kind of disheartening to see nerf after nerf after nerf to the class that you love, even if it is a fair thing to do. I personally would like to see harder nerfs and bigger buffs, because often we see stuff like 1 damage less or 1 damage more, or a tiny little RPM change on a lot of weapons, and it does nothing to actually change the meta. I'd rather see a weapon get gutted and then brought back up to its glory, or a weapon buffed too much and then needed to be toned back, than to see a patch where nothing changes. There's also the fact that the heavy class tends to be a class that not a lot of people actually like. It was voted on my YouTube channel as the least fun class, and I think there's decisions around when it comes to like balancing for casuals, low elo versus balancing for competitive players. And if you were to take, for example, the RPG, nerf it so that it's not as potent in high elo to about 90 damage, then you give them 2 of them and add the ability to rocket jump, while also removing the self damage or potentially putting it at like 5 or 10 damage. You're going to get a game where newer players are going to find that much more enjoyable. The experienced players are not going to be so frustrated with the power of it. And then we also get a skill gap on the gadget where high-elo players will eventually master the tech of rocket jumping and be able to pull off some insane stuff. Newer players are going to have something to learn and enjoy that is fun, while also not making the mistake of killing themselves with the RPG, which does happen a lot. There's certain ways where I think we can approach it where we can make stuff more fun, more viable, and balance both the casual and the competitive side of it. That's just one example I've thought of, but there's tons of things in this game where we can take that approach. And on the note of change, most people were expecting the new weapons to really shake up the classes and the type of people we run into in games. Just didn't really happen. In ranked, it basically feels the same as season 1. The heal beam and mesh dominate every game. We luckily are seeing light more viable, and no more recon spamming is also a very nice thing. It feels like we are getting close to being a more balanced meta. Meta will always exist. No matter what competitive game you play, people who master it will find a meta, and it will slowly take over. It's hard to avoid this, and I'm not saying we will ever get to a point of perfection, but there's this illusion of choice that players feel when picking up ranked in the finals. Having all these weapons, gadgets, abilities, and creating something unique for you is part of the fun. A lot of people end up using very creative and clever ways to combo their class in something like quick play. However, once they start to get into ranked, it can be upsetting to know that that smoke grenade that you like using becomes completely useless in ranked lobbies. Or the pyro grenade only gets one charge on a 30-second cooldown, so it just kind of becomes pointless because the main utility is at that point just to remove gas. And you end up just bringing a frag grenade like most other people that gets 2 charges on a 20-second cooldown. Even though pyro can kind of be fun, it just is not as strong as frag grenade, for example. Because of this, I'm sure a lot of people, unfortunately a small minority, are asking for buffs on things that they like. There's clearly a pretty imbalanced difference between, say something like a smoke grenade or a pyro versus a frag grenade. But sadly, since that is such a minority pick, we're probably not going to see buffs to it because there's not a large enough group and the majority tends to stick to the meta. And because of the meta, we often only ever ask or hear about nerfs to specific things. If there is one thing that's dominating the meta, such as the FCAR or the SA-12, mesh, heal beam, we're gonna see tons of people requesting to nerf these things, and we very rarely ever get any buffs for stuff that is just never used. Albeit a lot of them are kind of warranted when it does come to nerfs, and I'm sure if Embark released a patch with a big list of 10 plus weapons and gadgets that are in that weaker, rarely ever used category, we'd probably see a ton of happy players and a nice shakeup in the meta, which could potentially revive a lot of players as everyone calls their friends back to the game because it truly feels like a new game again. Keep in mind, I'm just a dude who loves to play the game, and the finals is my favorite game. I'm not some lead of balance, and I try to avoid suggesting any real ideas for balance. This might be a rare coincidence where I do. I'd much rather provide correct information and stats on the things in the game so that people can make their own decisions. Sometimes just addressing the fact that some things have a clear imbalance than something else is enough for me to kind of state my opinion without really stating my opinion. Luckily, I play everything in this game and I have fun doing so, but for those who main a specific role, I'm sure it can get pretty tedious feeling like there is no options outside of that one meta build, and I get that. Comment below with the changes you want to see most. Is it a buff to your favorite weapon or gadget? Is it a nerf to something you are tired of dying to? What annoys you the most? And if you could change it, how would you change it but still keep it viable? Overall, I'm happy with the direction of the game, and the game is extremely fun. We keep seeing the game take steps forward in the correct direction, and Embark wants nothing more than for us to be happy and enjoying their game. Be sure to test everything out, use correct stats, and I will see you in the finals.
There's a heavy back line, kinda, that's pretty weak.
Wait, one of the reds just left. Oh, no, another one there.
Running.
We can go for steal, go for steal.
Do we need to though?
Why not? It's funny.
Yo! This motherfucker, man.
Track again. He's one. Medium. I got a heavy chasing.
Medium that's tagged as one.
He's still one.
1 HP on me too.
They're all one shot. They're literally all one shot. Every single person I shot there was one bullet.
You want to play A or B?
I got the new 3090 in this bitch.
Oh shit.
They're in a bind now, Scotty.
Here, I brought you your coffee.
Bragging right now. Yo, thank you so much.
Yeah, I know, I appreciate it.
They ain't even see mine though.
Oh, where's yours?
Yeah, I got the bind. I got the little folders on the
Oh,
side.
damn.
You know what I'm saying? Organized and shit out here.
Dude,
Is that a-
and
is
you're
that a
vaping
razor?
too.
We got
And
7
you're
pencils.
vaping, bro?
There's
Yeah,
your pencils.
why are we
pencils,
vaping?
Vape club, bro.
Pencils, they're pencils,
Oh,
I swear.
please.